started. Hopefully you all are here for the leadership lesson session of the Essential Career Skills series. My name is Jaime Cox. I'm one of the student affairs specialists that work upstairs in student activities and organizations, SAO for short. So I'm going to be running this session. Going to be a little bit different than the other, I think, 3 at this point that we've had. A lot more reflection based, but I'm going to be talking to you about the different lessons that you've gained as a leader, either in student organizations, various places on campus, maybe in jobs, whatever you categorize leadership as. So going to get started with some reminders. Feel free to ask questions. Stop me at any time as we're going through this presentation. If you need clarification on anything, just raise your hand, let me know. Also, please participate in the discussion. It's going to make it more interesting for all of us. Make sure you're listening to understand, not just listening to get the content. So again, if you need any clarification, let me know. We're going to send you a PDF of this PowerPoint at the end of the session. And we'll also have some time at the end for follow-up questions, but if we don't get to all of them, feel free to email us and we'll get as many of them answered as we can. So just to, I guess, not really introduce the series anymore because we're about halfway through it, but this is the Essential Career Skills session. We're going through a series of 6 presentations, all of them focusing on the LPD competencies. This one is more rounded and focusing on all 4 of the areas. Our next session is going to be next week on Monday. I'm also leading that one on goal setting. And then at some point we will be doing interpersonal skills and intercultural knowledge. We just don't have a date set for that one yet. So the other 3 presentations have already passed, but they are recorded and I think all of them are online at this point. So you can go back and watch those. We're doing a certificate for completing this series. So if you go to 4 out of 6 of the sessions, you will get a certificate of completion. So to start off, I'm just going to kind of recap what we've talked about so far in these sessions and what career readiness is. So you all can read this, very short, to the point version is career readiness is your ability to demonstrate skills that you've gained that make you a better employee. A lot of this comes from an organization called the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And what they did was they took a survey of all of the people that hire college graduates straight out of college and said, these are the skills that employers want students to have post-graduation that make them good employees. That organization, when they first did their survey, actually found that a lot of students think that they're more career ready than they actually are. So students were, about 70%-ish of the students were saying they were career ready. 30% of those employers were saying, yeah, students are career ready out of college. And so what that really comes down to is students' ability to talk about what they've gained through their college experience. Up here is what Purdue has categorized as the essential career skills, or those competencies. So we're looking at communication, interpersonal skills and intercultural knowledge, interpersonal awareness and development, and ways of thinking. And that's going to be the 4 broad areas of these competencies. So this is really focused on how you give and receive information, how you process tasks internally, how you work with other people, and how you problem solve to make decisions. So I guess the other guest speakers that we've had for these sessions have really talked to you about their experience. And I'm going to do that a little bit too, but what makes this a little bit different is that for all of you undergraduate students out there, I was in your seats 5 years ago. Graduate students, a year and a half. So I am learning this myself. So by show of hands, how many of you are in student organizations? Most of you? Any presidents out there? A couple? Treasurers? Vice presidents? Secretaries? People that want to be any of those positions at some point. Okay. So for me, when I was going through undergraduate school, and I'm sure some of you can probably relate to this as well, 4, 5, 6 of my classes during my coursework said, I want you to submit a resume to me, and we're going to grade this as a class project. Anybody of you have that experience? And when you submit those, how often do those come back and say, I need more information on this topic? expand on this, tell me more, right? Right? Anybody have that experience? Want to share? I'll stand here, I'll make it awkward. No? You haven't? So one thing that I really took from my experience submitting resumes and always getting that feedback of I want more is that there's no right or wrong way to complete a resume. What's right for you may be wrong for somebody else. And you know, you could say, some employer could say it's perfect, and you could submit that resume to somebody else and they're going to say totally wrong, I don't want to hire you, right? And it took me forever to really realize that what they were saying when I want more is, tell me what you actually learned from that. So I would put on my resume that I was a manager at a retail store. And I opened and closed the store every morning. I counted the till. I made a schedule. And that's what I put on my resume. But they said, what does that actually mean? And so looking at it in a career readiness, competency-based approach, I could say that, I scheduled a staff of 7. And that really put my systems thinking and processing to work because I had to take everybody's availability, all 7 people's availability, and say, you can work on this day, and I need more people on this day, and where can I fill in the gaps? For those of you that are in student organizations, maybe that looks like being a secretary in your organization, right? And never, ever, ever let yourself say, I'm just a secretary. I just take notes, right? You don't just do anything. So maybe that for you looks like, I go to meetings every week. I process the information that we're getting from all of our meetings. I put it in written format so that everybody can understand what we talked about. Five weeks down the line, 5 years down the line, whatever it may be. In your academics, you can see this come forward in your academics as well. So maybe you are giving a presentation, right? And you're not just giving a presentation, you're summarizing and distilling the information that you're learning from your classes. You're putting it in a written and verbal communication format to then present that information to the rest of your class. In your group works, you're not just working as a team, you're developing those teamwork skills to say, I know how to work with other people in an academic setting, in a work setting, and that's what those employers really want to see. So, like I said, we spent a lot of time talking at you, so I really want to spend a lot of this session reflecting on your experiences as a leader. So some of you may have gotten those reflection questions via email. I'm also going to put them up here. But what I'd like to do is break us off into groups, smaller groups, talk about these questions, but really take this time to learn from each other. So if you're a student organization leader, learn what works for other organizations, or learn where you can collaborate with those organizations, right? So I'm going to put those questions back up. I also have a few handouts that I can give to you all. We're going to take some time to do those questions, and then we'll come back and discuss them as a group. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring us back. And I'm just going to run through these questions. Share with me if you want to share what your groups talked about, if you have an individual experience that relates to these questions. So starting with the first one, anybody out there want to share what intimidates you most about taking on a leadership role? Or if you're in that position, what intimidated you before you started or you wish you would have known?
People.
People? Tell me more about that. What do you mean, people?
They don't always like you in a leadership position.
Okay. So how would you say you managed that? Or would you manage that?
How would you manage that? Well, part of managing is realizing before you start that if you're going to be in a leadership position and make decisions for a group, not everybody's going to like it. But then once it happens, you don't want to alienate people, so then you want to take them aside individually and talk through it, and then maybe amend your plan somewhat.
Good. Yeah, I like that. I like that you mentioned that not everybody's going to like the decision that you made. I think that's really important to keep in the back of your head. Is as a leader, you may not make the right decision for everybody, but you need to make the right decision for you and the group as a whole, right? Anybody else want to share? In the back with the hat, and then we'll come up here.
Something that I was talking about was like putting yourself out there and then like failing, and then all of the effort you're putting in is just for pretty much nothing. And then also the like responsibility and accountability that you take on within a role. I feel like sometimes you don't really realize how much that can be until you're actually living it in a first-hand experience.
Yeah, so you mentioned that, you know, it sometimes feels like it's all for nothing, right? Is that what I heard? So what can you do with your organizations or your other leadership positions to propel what you're doing forward, to make it matter, to make it stick?
Can you rephrase that?
Yeah, so, you know, sometimes in a leadership position, and in my office, we see it in the form of officer turnover. And so, you know, sometimes you put something into effect with your organizations or in your leadership roles, and then you need to step down or your term ends, somebody else is coming up, and what you did as a leader may not move forward with the next group. So what can you do as a leader to make sure that those do stick, or those do move forward and continue to grow with the next leadership team?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of hard because the role that I was specifically speaking about, in my experience, I'm an RA and then a TA. So, like, the change is already inevitable, and I'm the character and I'm the consistency within the job, and I'm the one cultivating this community. But what I was, like, relating it more to is, like, sometimes the relationship aspect, where sometimes you put in the effort, and per se, someone is just like, oh, like, it's a long day, like, I'm just going to go in my room, right? So.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, you're not always going to be able to get through to everybody, right? So making sure that you are making those connections where you can and making that meaning where you can, I think is really important. I think you had something to share, didn't you?
Yeah, so our group kind of talked about, you know, you have to take the responsibility that comes with the leadership position, but in doing that, you're also taking responsibility of other people, and then you're also in charge of messing up and kind of with other people's reactions, so they may not like exactly what you've said. But then, you know, part of that responsibility is you have to take responsibility for other people's in a job, like the higher ups. You're responsible for like whoever you're in charge of, and then you also have the responsibility of knowing what the deadlines are, making sure you meet them, and then scheduling accordingly, and just kind of things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot to take on, a lot of responsibility. I think you touched on that too, that there's a lot of responsibility in leadership roles. So it really comes down to making sure that you manage your time wisely, you're keeping track of those deadlines, but you're also focusing on building your skills, and as a leader, it doesn't just stop with you. So you also want to build those skills of the people around you too, right? Go ahead.
I think part of that is listening enough and being loose enough to get some shared ownership. Because it's just yours, it might die with you, but if like it's co-owned, it'll keep going.
Absolutely, absolutely. We see that a lot in student organizations where officers are trying to do it all, right? And so I'm the president, I'm going to take the lead on all of this. But in reality, you can delegate some things out and share that responsibility and share that leadership and really focus on growing those skills of other people too. Anyone else want to share on that one before we move on? Okay. So what's something that you and your leadership roles have either implemented already or would like to implement, either here on campus or in other various roles, whatever leadership looks like to you? And then what made those successful, or what would success look like if you haven't implemented them yet?
I'm in a student organization, and we use recruitment for our members, and just making sure that the people we need numbers, and so making sure that people that are the face of your organization who actually interact with potential new members are people that want to be there. So that don't necessarily want to be a part of it, we put them in other roles, so making sure that you have the right faces out there.
Yeah, good. And how do you know which ones are the ones that are interested in being there?
You go through a training week beforehand, and you can tell who's going to try and who's not.
Okay. What else? Any other big plans on campus? Go ahead.
I'm the project manager for my senior design team, and I told my assistant manager last week that he's leaving the group this week.
What made you make that decision?
Because when I would stop for feedback, I wasn't getting much. They would just like nod their heads, but they weren't saying much. So I wanted to step back and hear it from somebody else's viewpoint.
Good. So again, the delegation and sharing that ownership, right? Anyone else? All right. So what have you all gained from your experiences as a leader, or if you're not in leadership positions now, what do you expect to gain out of those positions? Maybe somebody different this time? Go ahead.
I saw I gained responsibility and time management skills. I was a orientation leader last summer, and I had to like get a bunch of people in one space and like plan out events throughout the day that like everybody as a whole would do, so just a few people, and it was kind of hard to like get everyone together and like have people agree on ideas and stuff, but I'm really focused on open communication, and that helped a lot, so.
Good. Did you have anybody in the position before you maybe, or somebody in a leadership position above you that really helped move that forward at all?
Yeah, I had two leaders above me who, like, if I ever got stuck, like I could reach out and they gave past advice and experiences that they went through, so that was really helpful.
Yeah. It's always nice to have a strong leadership team above you, but also a strong network, right? I think you had something?
Yeah, formerly, for several years, I was kind of staff coordinator at Chicago Animal Shelter. And something that I learned from that experience was, kind of how to deal with multiple moving pieces. Because sometimes I would have upwards of, like 10 people coming in the span of like 30 minutes to do different tasks. And so I kind of learned how to, how to facilitate things effectively, as well as how to communicate.
Good. Anyone else want to share? All right, so if you were going to put those things that you gained into writing, or maybe in an interview, using the leadership and professional development competencies that we've been focusing this series on, how would you do it? I know I heard some good things during discussion. I know somebody has something to say.
Our group kind of took it from an interview perspective. We just thought that was easier. And we said, going in confident, and then instead of saying, I communicated, I learned communication, you provide examples of how you do that, and then explain what skills you gained from that example.
Okay, I like it. So when you're in an interview, are you all familiar with the STAR interview method? Yeah? No? See some heads? So a good way to think about those skills that you gain in an interview that really has worked for me is using that STAR method. So situation, task, action, result. Set the scene. Tell us what was going on to cause the issue, to cause the problem. What steps you took and what was the result, right? So I think in an interview setting, you can really use that to talk about the skills that you've gained of, I'm a good communicator and here's how. A little bit more difficult on a resume, that always comes first, right? So when you're trying to put those into words, make sure you're trying to quantify those as much as you can, the different skills that you've gained, and use those action verbs. I'm a communicator because I did this. I'm good at strategic thinking because I did this. Great. Anyone else? So how would you, and this kind of, the two questions kind of go hand in hand, but how would you communicate your essential career skills to future employers? Maybe in a resume, in an interview, even in a networking setting. How are you going to communicate that you are career ready and they should hire you? Yeah, go ahead.
Something that I do, aside from listening experiences and things that I gained from those, I have a section where I list skills and competencies. So I'll list like my technical abilities that I've gained throughout, and then competencies such as communication, and then list why it's like I had that skill, for example.
Yeah, I like it. I actually do that on my resumes too. So you know, you have your standard resume template, but right at the top I have 3 bullet points, and they say, here's a summary of what I'm going to tell you below about why you should hire me. And that's where I talk about I am a strategic thinker because I can do these 3 tasks, right? What else? Yeah, go ahead.
We talked about how it's important to be professional, but you also still have to be yourself. So you can't just, pretend to be all professional and then, just not authentic at all.
Yeah, I think we talked about that in one of the earlier sessions, being an authentic professional, right?
Yeah, if someone asked a question, that's what we were talking about. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I think that your professional authenticity is a great way to put that, and is very important in those settings. I know we still have some time. Anybody else want to share? All right. So then I'm going to go ahead and move on some general end of the presentation housekeeping things, and then I'll open the floor up for questions for all of you. Ask me anything you'd like about my experience, anything we've talked about. So up here you've got a couple of bit.ly links if you want to learn more about the leadership and professional development competencies. So you've got the self-guided modules, the experience database, and you can always schedule a one-on-one meeting with LPD or SAO staff. The LPD team is probably going to be a lot better at talking through these different modules just because you all have built those, correct? So if you have any questions about those specific modules, Harry's here afterwards if you have any questions about those, or you can reach out to them. But any of us would be more than happy to set up a one-on-one meeting to talk about these with you. So at this point, congratulations, you're one step closer to earning that certificate. So again, attend 4 out of those 6 sessions. I believe today was the 4th. So some of you may have earned that certificate already, some of you may be on your way towards that. But you are one step closer. Our next session is going to be on Monday at 6:30 in 2:30, so the room down the hall. Oh wait, actually that is this past Monday. So our next one is still on Monday, I believe. Maybe 5:30 in this room. Goal setting, and I'll be leading that one. So we'll take a look at individual goals for your leadership, but also some of your larger organization goals. You will also receive an automatic email from BoilerLink once we get all your attendance tracked. Again, I'll pull that link up here in just a minute. We can try that again because I know we were having some issues at the beginning. If that still doesn't work, I'll make sure to get you all tracked so you can earn that certificate. Once we get that tracked, you'll get that automatic email with a survey. Please consider giving us some feedback on these sessions. We'd love to hear what your thoughts were so we can improve if we replicate this next semester. We also encourage you to follow us on social media. So this is the best place to get updates. Weather happens, things happen, we need to reschedule, so we'll post all of that on social media. The LPD social media accounts have a lot of other content relating to those competencies to help you learn more. The SAO social media accounts talk about a lot of student org events as well as other things happening on campus. And then, like I said, any updates to these sessions.
And I'd also remind you that we have Leadership and Professional Development has created a community on the Purdue Ties site So if you go to Purdue Ties and you can register as, it's the Alumni Association site. You can register there as a student, be part of that site, and then join our community. We'll send you more information about that. There'll be opportunities for discussions, for networking, to get coaching, to participate in mentoring, and it's all around developing these leadership and professional development skills, abilities, competencies, and getting yourself career ready. And I think that's what this is all about, is career readiness. And understanding that Purdue University has made a commitment to ensure that each one of you, and right now they just use the term undergraduates, so if you're a graduate, don't feel left out, you can come along too, to develop boundary spanning, discipline spanning, career spanning skills and abilities that you are going to get and be able to develop and experience and learn both in your classes and outside your classes. And so it's all about the movement to experiential education. So